The collective's central intelligence hub hummed with the synchronized thoughts of 1,000 minds, each consciousness precisely calibrated to maintain perfect harmony. Among them, observer first class Tulera found herself experiencing what her species would consider the closest thing to agitation, a slight disruption in the usual flow of shared consciousness. Anomaly detected in Sector 7, subsection 23. She broadcast through the neural network. Unknown neural patterns exceeding all documented parameters. The signal that had caught her attention originated from a spiral arm of what the collective classified as a relatively unremarkable galaxy. Yet these readings defied everything in their extensive database. The neural patterns showed sporadic spikes of activity that should have rendered any sentient species non-functional, yet somehow they persisted, even thrived. The collective, comprising 17 of the most advanced species in the known universe, had long since evolved beyond such chaotic neural structures. Their minds worked in perfect synchronization, each thought carefully measured, each decision reached through flawless logical progression. They had eliminated the inefficiencies of emotion, the redundancies of individual thought, and the wasteful process of trial and error. High Administrator Zenthor, their designated interface with lower life forms, initiated a focused observation of the signal source, a blue-green planet its inhabitants called Earth. These beings, Zenthor communicated through the network. Their minds are in constant flux. They experience extreme neural variations we would classify as emotional instability. Yet they have achieved spaceflight, developed quantum computing, and show signs of rapid technological advancement. The humans, as they called themselves, were an anomaly that demanded further study. The collective had encountered countless species throughout their million-year history, but none quite like this. Humans seemed to function, even excel, despite their minds being in what the collective would consider a permanent state of dysfunction. But before the collective could proceed with their standard protocols for studying primitive species, their long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. A massive disturbance was approaching from the outer rim of the galaxy. The Void Harbingers, cosmic entities that consumed all in their path, breaking down the very fabric of space-time. The collective had encountered the Harbingers before, in ancient records passed down through generations. Every civilization that had faced them had fallen, their perfectly ordered societies crumbling before the chaos of the void. The collective's simulations predicted their arrival within 5 standard solar cycles. High Administrator Zenthor called an emergency session of the Central Intelligence Hub. Our logical protocols have calculated a 99.98% probability of failure against the Void Harbingers using our current strategies. All previous attempts by advanced civilizations to resist them have failed. The assembled minds processed this information in perfect synchronization, running billions of simulations in seconds. Each one ended in defeat. The Harbingers operated outside the bounds of known physics, their actions defying prediction or pattern recognition. Then, a junior observer named Kuril transmitted an observation that sent ripples through the collective consciousness. The humans, their neural patterns matched the chaos signature of the Harbingers. The suggestion was so unexpected that it momentarily disrupted the collective's harmony. Humans, with their unpredictable thoughts and emotional instability, might understand something about chaos that the collective's perfect logic could not grasp. Impossible. Many minds transmitted simultaneously. Primitive beings cannot comprehend what we cannot. But as the collective analyzed the data, they couldn't deny the correlation. The same neural chaos that they had dismissed as dysfunction in humans bore striking similarities to the energy patterns of the Void Harbingers. Where the collective saw only disorder, humans might see patterns their own perfectly ordered minds were incapable of recognizing. High Administrator Zenthor made an unprecedented decision. We must initiate contact with Earth, not as observers or superior beings, but as seekers of knowledge. Their chaos might be the key to our survival. The decision sent shockwaves through the collective. Never in their history had they sought help from a lesser species, yet their perfect logic could not deny the possibility. However remote, that humanity's greatest weakness might prove to be their greatest strength. As the collected ships prepared for first contact, they recorded something else extraordinary. Human entertainment transmissions showed they had imagined and prepared for alien contact in countless scenarios, some peaceful, many hostile. They had already conceived of possibilities the collective had never considered, their chaotic minds spinning countless variations of potential futures. Perhaps, Zenfor transmitted to the collective, we have not evolved beyond emotion and chaos. Perhaps we have evolved away from something essential. We are about to find out. The great ships of the collective emerged from fold space above Earth, their crystalline structures refracting sunlight in complex patterns. As they prepared to broadcast their message to humanity, they detected military installations worldwide shifting to high alert, weapons systems powering up, and governments scrambling to respond. The humans' reaction was exactly what the collective would have once dismissed as primitive, a mixture of fear, curiosity, aggression, and hope. But now, facing an enemy that defied their perfect logic, the collective wondered if these primitive responses might be exactly what the galaxy needed. Commander Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her fingers drumming an irregular pattern on the podium, a habit that would have horrified the alien delegates observing from their crystalline hover platforms. The collective's representatives remained perfectly still, their silvery skin reflecting the chamber's lights in mathematical patterns. "Let me get this straight," Sarah said, her voice carrying a mix of disbelief and barely contained amusement. "You're asking for our help because what's the diplomatic way to put this, emotionally unstable?" High Administrator Zenthor's translator converted his neural patterns into speech. "We prefer to think of it as neural diversity, Commander Chen. Your species possesses cognitive patterns that mirror our enemy's chaos signatures. You understand disorder in ways we cannot." The council chamber erupted in murmurs. Humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization had come with an unexpected twist. They wanted humanity's help not despite their emotional nature, but because of it. Admiral Rodriguez, his weathered face creased with skepticism, leaned forward. "You're telling us that these void harbingers are coming, that they've destroyed every logical, advanced civilization they've encountered, and you think our primitive emotional responses might be the key to stopping them?" "Correct," Zenfor responded. "Our simulations suggest a 99.98% probability of failure using conventional tactics. But when we incorporate human unpredictability into our models, the outcomes become uncertain. And uncertainty, in this case, represents hope." Sarah watched as the council members exchanged glances. The collective's admission of their own limitations went against everything humanity had assumed about more advanced civilizations. They had expected to be the students, not the teachers. The first joint military exercise 3 weeks later proved enlightening for both species. The collective had provided a training ground on one of their orbital platforms, where mixed teams of humans and collective members faced combat simulations. Captain James Okonjo led his team through a scenario, deliberately ignoring the collective's carefully calculated optimal path. His squad mate, a collective warrior designated Corel, transmitted waves of confusion through their neural link. "Captain, you are moving contrary to tactical projections," Corel observed as James led them through a maintenance shaft. James grinned, his heart racing with the thrill of combat, even in simulation. "That's exactly why it'll work. The enemy will have calculated the optimal path too. They won't expect us to do something this stupid." The simulation proved him right. By taking an illogical route, James's team flanked the enemy forces, achieving victory in a scenario the collective had deemed unwinnable. It was the first of many such successes. But integration wasn't without its challenges. The collective struggled to comprehend human decision-making processes that relied on gut feelings or hunches. Humans, in turn, found the collective's rigid adherence to probability frustrating. During a strategic planning session, Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's leading genopsychologist, made a breakthrough. "You've been trying to eliminate chaos from your civilization for millions of years," she told the assembled collective leaders. But chaos isn't just disorder, it's potential. It's the space where new possibilities emerge. She projected a series of human brain scans. See these neural patterns you find so disturbing. They're not bugs in our system, they're features. Evolution kept them because sometimes survival depends on being unpredictable, on making leaps of logic that shouldn't work but do. The collective's response was unprecedented. Instead of dismissing her theory, they began to analyze their own history. They discovered that their greatest achievements had often come from rare moments of computational uncertainty, tiny flaws in their perfect logic that had led to unexpected solutions. As the days passed, something remarkable happened. The collective members working closely with humans began to experience what they called pattern disruptions, minimal but significant deviations from their usual perfect synchronization. Instead of correcting these disruptions, they studied them. Commander Chen noticed the change during a joint tactical session. The collective representatives were moving differently, their usual perfect coordination showing subtle variations. They were learning to embrace uncertainty. "Your chaos is infectious," Zenthor told her, using what humans would have sworn was actual humor. "We are beginning to understand why your species tells stories about impossible victories. You don't just adapt to chaos, you thrive on it." But time was running out. The Void Harbinger's approach was accelerating, their cosmic wake disrupting communication networks across 3 sectors. The combined human collective fleet had barely 4 weeks to prepare for an enemy that had never been defeated. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Humanity's Hope, watching as hundreds of ships, human and collective alike, maneuvered in formations that would have been considered tactically unsound just months ago. They were creating patterns within chaos, order within disorder. "You know," he said to Zenthor, who stood beside him, "there's an old human saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good." Zenthor's neural patterns flickered in what humans had learned to recognize as deep contemplation. "Perhaps that is why we failed before. We sought perfect solutions when we should have been seeking imperfect ones that work." As the fleet prepared for its first engagement with the Harbinger's advanced forces, humanity's flaws had become their greatest asset. The coming battle would test not just their weapons and tactics, but a new way of thinking, one that combined the collective's computational precision with humanity's embrace of chaos. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. The species the collective had once dismissed as barely sentient was teaching them how to survive. The first Void Harbinger emerged from the quantum rift like a tear in reality itself. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Humanity's Hope as the entity defied every natural law, its form shifting between states of matter that shouldn't coexist. "That's not what I expected," she muttered, her hand instinctively tightening on the tactical console. The Harbinger was neither ship nor creature, but something in between, a mass of writhing darkness that seemed to consume the very starlight around it. Through the neural link, she felt the collective members' consciousness ripple with recognition and fear. Their perfect logic struggled to process what they were seeing, their minds seeking patterns where none existed. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," Carell reported, his usually steady neural patterns showing distinct fluctuations. They're not following any known laws of physics." "Good," Sarah replied, earning surprised looks from both human and collective crew members. "That means they can't predict us either." The combined fleet had positioned itself in what the collective had initially declared a tactically inferior position, scattered in seemingly random formations around a dying star. It was a strategy born from a late-night conversation between human tactical officers and their collective counterparts, fueled by what the aliens had learned to recognize as human intuition. Captain James Okonjo's voice crackled over the comm. "Remember the bar fight protocol, people. Sometimes the best move is the one that makes no sense at all." The bar fight protocol had become almost legendary during their training sessions. It was James's way of describing humanity's ability to act without perfect information, to throw a punch not because it was tactically sound, but because it would surprise the enemy. The Harbinger's attack came not as a conventional weapons burst, but as a wave of reality-distorting energy that should have torn the fleet apart. Should have, except the ships weren't where they were supposed to be. Now, Sarah commanded. The human ships fired their modified engines, executing maneuvers that the collective simulations had deemed physically improbable. They spun and dove through space in patterns that mimicked the chaos of the Harbinger itself, while the collective vessels provided precisely calculated supporting fire. The Harbinger's formation was breaking apart, but at a terrible cost. Half the human fleet was gone, and the remaining collective ships were showing signs of severe quantum stress. Yet in the neural network, Sarah felt something unprecedented. Collective minds experiencing pure, raw emotion, while human minds touched the edge of perfect logic. "We're not just fighting them," she transmitted to the fleet. "We're showing them another way to exist. Everyone, prepare for final protocol. Let's show them what humanity's really made of." The battle was far from over. But as Sarah watched the quantum rifts beginning to fluctuate in new ways, she knew they had reached a point of no return. Whatever happened next would change not just humanity or the collective, but the very nature of existence in their galaxy. James's sacrifice had shown them the way. Now they had to finish what he had started, whatever the cost. The quantum rifts pulsed with new patterns as Commander Sarah Chen initiated the final protocol. On her tactical display, the remaining Harbinger ships writhed in configurations that seemed almost organic, no longer the perfect chaos they had once been, but something evolving, changing. "All ships, channel everything into the quantum network," she ordered. "Not just your power, everything. Every thought, every feeling, every memory." Through the neural link, she felt the collective minds merging with human consciousness in ways their creators had never imagined possible. The barrier between logic and emotion, order and chaos, began to dissolve. Dr. Maya Patel's voice came through, strained but triumphant. "The quantum field is harmonizing with human brainwave patterns. The Harbingers, they're responding to our emotional signatures." The combined fleet moved in perfect synchronization, but not with the cold precision of machines or the raw chaos of pure emotion. Each ship pulsed with what could only be described as life itself, the pure, unfiltered essence of conscious existence. High Administrator Zenthor's neural patterns resonated with a depth that would have been impossible months ago. "We understand now. The Harbingers weren't destroyers by nature. They were seeking what we all sought: completion." The realization spread through the fleet like a wave of light. The Harbingers, in their perfect chaos, had been searching for the one thing they couldn't create or consume: genuine consciousness, the perfect blend of logic and emotion that made sentient life unique. Sarah felt her own consciousness expanding through the network, touching minds both human and collective. In that moment of connection, she understood what James had discovered in his final moments. The Harbingers weren't their enemy. They were a mirror, showing them what they could become. "Now," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of both species' hopes, "show them who we really are." The fleet's modified quantum drives activated simultaneously, but they weren't generating weapons or defenses. Instead, they created a field of pure consciousness, human emotion tempered by collective logic, wisdom strengthened by passion, order enhanced by chaos. The effect on the Harbingers was immediate and astonishing. Their forms began to shift, no longer the darkness that consumed everything, but something that reflected light in impossible colors. They were transforming, achieving the synthesis they had unknowingly sought across ends of existence. Admiral Rodriguez watched from his bridge as space itself seemed to breathe with new life. "Would you look at that?" he murmured. "We didn't need to destroy them. We just needed to show them another way to be." The Harbingers' quantum signatures began to align with the fleet's consciousness field. They weren't surrendering or being defeated. They were joining in a dance of existence that transcended the boundaries of known physics and emotion. "They were like us," Corell transmitted, his thoughts tinged with wonder. The collective sought perfect order, Humans embraced their chaos, and the harbingers were caught between, unable to find balance until now. The transformation spread across space like a new kind of dawn. Where there had been battles, there was now creation. The harbingers' ability to alter reality, combined with human emotion and collective logic, began to give birth to something unprecedented, a new form of existence that honored all paths to consciousness. Sarah felt James's sacrifice take on new meaning. He hadn't died to defeat an enemy. He had given himself to show them all a greater truth. In his final moment of pure humanity, he had opened a door that none of them had known existed. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity station, watching ships of all 3 species, human, collective, and transformed harbinger, moving in harmonious patterns through space. Admiral Rodriguez's voice cut through the tension. Remember, people, size doesn't matter nearly as much as what you do with it. The old military humor, so foreign to the collective just months ago, now brought a ripple of appreciation through the neural network. But this was different from their first encounter. The harbingers had adapted, their formations showing patterns that seemed to mock the fleet's earlier tactics. They had learned from their scouts' defeat, and their chaos now had purpose. The first wave of their attack shattered 3 collective ships before anyone could react. The vessels didn't explode, they simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to something that defied analysis. They're not just using chaos anymore. Dr. Maya Patel's voice crackled over the comm from her research station. They're weaponizing order itself. Our own patterns are being used against us. Sarah felt it through the neural link, the collective minds beginning to fragment under the assault. Their logical processes, even augmented by human unpredictability, were starting to break down. That's when Captain James Okonjo did something that would be recorded in both human and collective histories. He disconnected his ship from the neural network entirely. Sometimes, his voice came through clear and strong. You have to stop thinking and just feel. Before anyone could stop him, James piloted his vessel directly into the heart of the nearest harbinger formation. His ship's modified quantum drive wasn't just creating micro-rifts anymore. He had transformed his entire vessel into a quantum uncertainty field. "James, what are you doing?" Sarah demanded, even as her tactical display showed his ship's signature becoming increasingly erratic. "What humans do best," he replied. Something completely irrational. The harbingers, unable to predict or counter his ship's quantum state, began to react. Their perfect formations wavered as they encountered something that was neither order nor chaos, but a human soul transformed into pure possibility. Through the neural network, Sarah felt Carell's sudden understanding. "He's not fighting them," the collective warrior transmitted. "He's becoming them, but with something they don't have. Purpose, intent, heart." James's voice came through one last time, crackling with quantum interference. "Somebody once said that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, I say sufficiently advanced emotion is indistinguishable from miracle." Now, his ship detonated, but it wasn't an explosion in any conventional sense. It was a cascade of pure potential, a burst of human consciousness transformed into quantum reality. The blast rippled through the Harbinger fleet, not destroying them but changing them, introducing an element they had never encountered: genuine emotion. The effect was catastrophic for the Harbingers. Their perfect chaos began to break down as they encountered something that transcended both order and disorder: the complexity of human feeling. "All ships," Sarah commanded, her voice thick with emotion, but her mind clear with purpose. "Execute Protocol Humanity." The combined fleet moved as one, but not with the collective's previous precision, or even their practiced chaos. Instead, each ship acted with what could only be called heart. Human crews let their emotions guide their actions, while collective minds provided the framework to make those actions possible. Ships danced through space in patterns that reflected joy, anger, hope, and fear, the full spectrum of human experience amplified by collective technology. The Harbingers, faced with this emotional quantum state, began to falter. Some of their ships simply vanished, their existence negated by contact with pure human feeling. Others began to show signs of change, their chaos acquiring a pattern that looked almost like curiosity. High Administrator Zenthor's voice carried across all channels, heavy with understanding. We sought to perfect ourselves by eliminating emotion, but in doing so, we nearly eliminated our ability to truly exist. Humanity hasn't survived because of logic or despite their chaos. They've survived because they never stopped feeling. The battle raged on, but something fundamental had changed. The Harbingers, for the first time in their existence, were encountering something they couldn't simply consume or destroy. The indomitable human spirit, supported by the collective's vast knowledge. As ships continued to fall on both sides, Sarah realized that this wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was becoming something else, a transformation. The question wasn't just whether they would survive, but what they would become in the process. The Harbinger's energy wave passed through empty space as the fleet's seemingly random movements created a pattern of negative space, a void within the void. Dr. Maya Patel's theory had proven correct. The Harbinger's strength was their unpredictability, but that same chaos made them vulnerable to equally unpredictable responses. Phase 2, Sarah ordered, feeling the neural network light up with a mixture of collective precision and human improvisation. The fleet's ships began moving in what looked like a drunken dance, their patterns shifting between order and chaos. The collective had integrated human brainwave patterns into their ship's movement algorithms, creating something entirely new, controlled chaos. The Harbinger seemed to hesitate, its form fluctuating as it encountered something it couldn't process. For the first time in recorded history, one of these cosmic destroyers showed signs of confusion. That's when James unleashed his masterstroke. His squadron had modified their ship's quantum drives based on what he called a crazy hunch, using the drives not for propulsion, but to generate their own micro-rifts in space. Let's show them what happens when you combine human insanity with alien tech, he transmitted, executing Operation Chaos Dance. The modified drives activated, creating a web of quantum distortions that mirrored the Harbinger's own reality warping field. It was like fighting fire with fire, or in this case, chaos with chaos. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The Harbinger's form began to destabilize, its attempt to process the conflicting patterns creating a feedback loop in its own structure. The entity tried to retreat, but found itself trapped in a cage of its own mathematical impossibilities. Analysis, Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Corell's response carried an emotion that would have been impossible for a collective member months ago. Excitement. The entity's coherence is failing. It's beautiful, Commander. The chaos is perfectly balanced. The Harbinger's form collapsed in on itself, its matter-defying structure unable to maintain cohesion in the face of weaponized unpredictability. The victory was swift and complete, but Sarah knew this was just the beginning. One down, she broadcast to the fleet. But their main force is still coming. At least now we know our insanity works. The battle had proved something fundamental about the nature of existence itself. The collective's perfect logic and humanity's emotional chaos weren't opposing forces. They were complementary aspects of a greater whole. The Harbinger's power came from their ability to defy logical patterns, but they had never encountered beings who could embrace chaos while maintaining control. In the aftermath, human and collective scientists worked together to analyze the data, each bringing their unique perspectives. The humans saw patterns in the randomness that the collective's logical minds had missed, while the collective's precision helped channel those insights into practical applications. Admiral Rodriguez stood on his bridge, watching the fleet regroup and prepare for the larger battle to come. "You know what's really interesting?" he said to Zenthor. "We've spent all this time thinking we needed to overcome our emotions, to be more logical. Turns out, the universe might need both." Zenthor's neural patterns showed what humans now recognized as agreement. Perhaps true advancement isn't about eliminating chaos or emotion, but learning to dance with them. Your species has been practicing this dance for millennia. We are only now learning its steps. As the fleet prepared for the arrival of the main Harbinger force, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's greatest weakness had become the galaxy's greatest hope, not because they had conquered their chaotic nature, but because they had learned to embrace it. The real test was still to come, but for the first time since the Harbingers had been detected, both humans and the collective felt something that defied logical analysis. Hope. The main Harbinger fleet arrived like a nightmare given form, a vast darkness that seemed to swallow entire star systems. From her position on the bridge of the UES Humanity's Hope, Commander Sarah Chen watched as the long-range sensors struggled to make sense of what they were detecting. 17. No 23 quantum rifts opening, Corell reported, his neural patterns showing traces of what could only be described as awe. The Harbinger vessels, if we can call them that, are at least 3 times larger than the scout we encountered. We thought we were preparing for the end, she said to Zenthor, who stood beside her in a form that shifted between solid and energy. Instead, we were preparing for a beginning. The High Administrator's response came both verbally and through the enhanced neural network that now connected all 3 species. Humanity's greatest gift wasn't their chaos or their emotions. It was their ability to imagine something better, to look into the darkness and see not an enemy, but a possibility. Below them, Dr. Patel was working with a team of scientists from all 3 species, studying the new physics that had emerged from their synthesis. The boundaries between thought and reality, emotion and energy, had become fluid. They were learning to create something that none of them could have achieved alone. You know what the real irony is, Sarah mused, watching a Harbinger ship phase through quantum states in what she now recognized as an expression of joy. We spent so long trying to overcome our natures, the collective trying to eliminate emotion, humans trying to master their chaos, the Harbingers trying to consume everything they couldn't understand. Turns out we just needed to accept who we were and learn from each other. The stars seemed brighter now, or perhaps they were just seeing them differently. The galaxy was entering a new age, one where consciousness itself was becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. As Sarah looked out at the infinite expanse of space, she smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, James was watching. His sacrifice had taught them all that the greatest power in the universe wasn't in weapons or technology, or even perfect logic. It was in the ability to feel, to change, and to grow. The story of humanity's flaws becoming the galaxy's salvation would be told for generations to come. But it wasn't just a story of victory. It was a reminder that true evolution comes not from becoming perfect, but from remaining perfectly human.